Welcome to the Learning League podcast, where the most influential minds in learning assemble. This is the podcast that challenges the way we think about leadership and professional development. We're hitting Control Alt Learn to reset outdated ideas, spark innovation, and explore new ways to empower business leaders, people managers, and learning professionals. Today's guest brings a marketing and branding lens to that mission, showing us how storytelling and emotional connection can elevate not just customer engagement, but internal learning, team alignment, and organizational culture. Today, we welcome Len Silverman, with over 30 years of experience building powerhouse brands like AngelSoft, Scovill Fasteners, and Fruit of the Loom. Len knows how to take a message from just fine to unforgettable. He's a former VP, a 7-figure business owner, and now the co-founder of Up to 11 Marketing, where he helps companies crank their strategies up from basic to brilliant. Len is also an educator, sought-after speaker, and author of Mesh, aligning the personal brand of Gen Z with your company culture, a fresh and fearless look at how businesses connect with the next generation of talent without losing who they are. Bottom line, Len doesn't just build brands, he builds meaning, momentum, and magnetic connections that actually stick. Welcome, Len.
Thanks for having me, Cheryl. Appreciate that introduction, too. I'd love to meet that guy.
Oh, that's funny. No, that's you.
Thank you.
That's right. No imposter syndrome here. That's you. I would love to dive right in with your professional journey and what led you into the world of marketing, branding, and business strategy.
Well, if you want the true story is one thing that led me to it was getting a relatively low grade in chemistry my first year in college. So I was on the road to becoming an ophthalmologist. That was my goal, which obviously wasn't too significant of a goal because I let a C+ in chemistry sway me from that. But wow. I rethought my interests and became interested in advertising. And so actually my undergrad degree is in advertising. Basically flash forwarding through some of the things that you talked about, I found early on advertising was limited for me because you were taking someone else's core message and delivering it. And I really wanted to be at the head of the screen. So I went back, got an MBA at Emory University and focused on marketing and specifically marketing strategy. It felt right to me. And I like it because we'll talk a little bit more about this, but I like it because it's about really fully understanding your audience, your consumer, whoever that is, the consumer of your product, your service, or just you as a person, and then managing your message to those people based on what they're looking for. I like that.
Yeah, and this is obviously what kind of led you to this whole co-founder with Up to 11 Marketing.
Yeah, it did. When people ask me at a party, what do you do? I always say I help business leaders to aim and then shoot. Because so many of them, unfortunately, particularly in smaller businesses, are so busy in the business that they just want to hire some professional to do something for them to get the word out. And it proves to be wasteful in a lot of cases because they're talking to the wrong audience or they're saying the wrong thing or something that's not truly targeted. So we slow down, work with them to develop a strategic plan so we can aim And then when we're ready to shoot that marketing and advertising out, it's much more effective, hopefully for even less money than what they're currently spending.
Yeah. Any insight on the name and how he or someone came to be, up to 11? I'm just curious.
Yeah. I'll give you both stories, okay? The first story is up to 11 is all about taking your company up to that next gear. We like to work with clients who are successful already and just get them up to that next level, which we have evidence that absolutely is happening with our clients. Yeah. But fundamentally, the story is there's a movie called This Is Spinal Tap, which came out about 30 years ago. And it's a documentary, a fake documentary about an English rock band. And one of the artists from the band is showing off an amplifier, and the amplifier goes up to 11. And the interviewer says, well, why not just make 10 louder? And he gets so confused. He just said, well, but this goes up to 11. I just always thought that was really funny. So that's really where it came from.
Okay, I can see that. Now I'm going to have to go look the movie up. You have me interested now.
Yeah, well, the good thing is timing is everything, right? They're coming out with Spinal Tap 2, and it's supposed to come out in the fall. So you'll probably hear that line a lot, I'm guessing.
Wow. Okay, so we're going to have a tag on a movie here for our social media. I honestly thought that it was something to do with rating yourself from 1 to 10, but instead take it up to 11. Like
yes,
I kind of thought. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a double meaning, and both of them are powerful.
Yeah. So, what's your typical client, and what challenges or pain points are they usually experiencing?
Yeah, well, I would say, first of all, no one is ever typical, right? I mean, that's part of the conversation is everyone and every company is unique. But I will say that we have a special place in our heart and our skill set for home services companies. So roofers and HVAC companies, to me, they are the backbone of America. I know a lot of people who own those businesses. I know people who work for those businesses. And as much as I can help them, I want to. The second are companies that are in very niche markets with highly specialized product offerings. And I know those sound very different, but the reason that I like that is because typically in their field, they're very technical. They involve a lot of jargon and understanding of maybe engineering or science or something like that. And although I didn't get the grade I was looking for in chemistry back in my undergrad days, I also have a heart for engineering. And, I worked for Scovill Fasteners for a lot of years. Yeah. And I know the challenges that people have in those industries of getting the word out and really being thought leaders. So I would say the similarity between all the companies we work with is really identifying who your ideal customers are and then creating messaging that truly connects with them. The differences are that in the home services market, it's consumers like you and me. And in the more specialty areas, it's very a small group of B2B companies typically. Yeah. And so it's much more of a challenge to get their attention and get the message in front of them.
Yeah. I think that kind of leads into our next topic, which is happens to be my favorite, which is storytelling. Storytelling seems to play a major role in how you approach branding. So what does it really mean to you? Why do you believe it works?
Storytelling is as old as time. I mean, we as human beings are just wired to tell and listen to stories. It is a fantastic way to communicate really nuanced information in a way that can be entertaining, but also much more easily understood by the people listening. So I believe every brand at the end of the day really is a story. The truth be told, you look at an incredible brand like Coca-Cola, and you really break it down into its fundamental purpose in life.
Mm-hmm.
It's a sweet drink that quenches your thirst. But when you look at the mammoth brand that they have built on top of that, where they create a feeling that you get when you drink Coca-Cola, you know, you think about the Coca-Cola Santa Claus that was created, and now we've got this feeling about Santa and Christmas and the polar bears. And I'm not saying, you know, that an HVAC company needs to recreate Santa Claus, but you as an owner or a leader of a company have much more than a product on your hand. What you have is a product or a service that makes your customers feel a certain way because you're generally solving a problem for them. That's the story. So as best as possible, just remember, you are not the lead character. You are not the hero. The hero is your customer. And so the better you can focus on your customer and really truly understand the problems that they're facing, if you've got the solution to that problem, you become a secondary hero for sure. But you've got to solve that problem first. And the best way for the customer to understand you can do that is by telling them the story. You know, we understand what you're going through. What's it going to be like if you don't solve this problem? And then more importantly, what is your life going to be like when you do solve the problem? When I come in and solve this problem for you. Ultimately, that's the power, I think, in marketing.
And when you're going in solving that problem, let's say you're working with a new client, and you have to uncover that story or develop the brand identity. What does that process look like?
One of my favorite parts of our process, we have a program that we call Strategy First, and it lives up to its name, which is we're not doing anything until we develop a strategy. We go through a competitive analysis because we want to find out, you know, if the world was a grid, where do you live in the grid? So you can identify your place in the world as a brand and a product. We also dive into how you present yourself in the marketplace. But the thing that I like to do the most is I like to interview my clients' clients. So we typically get 6 to 8 of their clients. And you may be familiar with the customer journey, but that's how people get to know you and trust you and buy from you and all the way down the line. We like to interview their client and ask them how they feel at every step of the customer journey with this particular brand so that we can see if there are holes. If we can see also where there are strengths, because typically we're interviewing your best clients. So we want to know, how did your best client find you? What made your best client decide to try you? And then we want to replicate that. So that's a fundamental and actually a very fun part of the process for us.
Do you ever get any negative on that? Is it all positive?
We actually ask that. We always ask for advice that you would give to the company. I wouldn't say it's ever negative, but it usually is constructive. Like, we're working with a roofing company right now, and there were some suggestions about talking a little bit more about warranties so that the buyer could feel more secure in making that purchase. Good advice. So, things like that are really helpful.
Okay. All right. Well, that's good to know. You're not too scared when you start that process. Don't be scared. It's good, positive, constructive feedback to help you grow. Now,
absolutely. I'd rather have my 5 best customers give me advice than 1,000 people who don't buy from me giving me advice by not buying from me. Do you know what I mean?
100%. Exactly. I want to know what they're thinking.
Yes.
And you've worked with both smaller businesses and national brands. Like, how do their strategies differ?
The beauty of strategy is it really doesn't differ. I mean, if you look at a strategic marketing plan, and I've taught marketing at the college level, and I've broken down that, a marketing plan. We did a whole semester on a marketing. That marketing plan that I went through fundamentally came from my work, specifically with Georgia Pacific. We had a great process. So I'm running the AngelSoft bath tissue brand. We did an annual marketing plan with research, and then we would come back on the backside of it and see what was working and what wasn't. Okay. I don't do anything differently. The only difference, honestly, between a big corporation and the smaller businesses are resources. The smaller companies just typically don't have the resources of the bigger ones. So there are some things you would have to forego. For instance, with AngelSoft, I was able to set up focus groups, and we did them in 6 geographically dispersed but demographically matched markets. I mean,
that's costly.
It's adventure, right? I don't think my local garage floor company is going to be able to do that.
Right.
But that's okay.
Questionnaires are great.
Right. Questionnaires are great. There's lots of ways to get at information. Polls on social media are a good way to get some quick information.
Sure.
But still, we have found the workaround that works best for us are those individual interviews. They're just super powerful.
I can imagine, yeah. So I understand that you've dipped your toes into the literary world as well. What inspired you to write a book, and what can readers expect?
As far as inspiration is concerned, I think the biggest inspiration was a little bit of kicking myself in the butt and just saying, I don't know how many people you meet. I meet a lot of people who say, I'm going to, or I want to write a book. I've got an idea. Again. And I certainly am one of those people too. And finally, I decided the only difference between them and someone who has written a book is they've written the book. And so I sat down about a little over a year and a half ago, and just said, this is it. Just take the computer out, start doing it, and don't let yourself make excuses. And once I started that process, I just committed myself to it. It's kind of like diet and exercise. You're either going to do it or you're not going to do it.
Yeah.
But ultimately, the book is it's very focused on Gen Z. And the reason for that is for the last 21 years, I owned Huntington Learning Center locations. So I was in the education business. And when I started in 2004, the oldest member of Gen Z was 7 years old. And so I've worked with them as they were growing up. And I've had conversations as they were getting ready for college, having summer jobs, looking at their career possibilities down the road. And I was just hearing significant differences in the way that they view things than how I did as a Gen Xer. Mm-hmm. And I talk to my friends out there who own businesses, and I don't know if you ever hear this, but I hear a lot of, I'm never going to hire Gen Z. They're impossible to work with, things like that.
A lot of retail folks say that.
Yes. And I'm not here to say that those problems are not happening, but by the end of this decade, 30% of the workforce is going to be Gen Z. So we got to figure this out. And the Gen Z generation has a lot of strengths. They have different ways that they look at the world and work. And I took the same philosophy of the customer journey in marketing, and I thought, you know what? If you look at the employee journey, it's really no different. I mean, at the end of the day, your employees are a consumer of your corporate culture. So sell them your corporate culture. And that's the way the book is written. It's understand Gen Z and then really understand every step of your own employee journey to make sure you're modifying just enough that you can really mesh this generation in.
Hence the title. Yes. And are you speaking to businesses and companies in the book? You're not speaking to Gen Z at any point.
It's funny you mentioned that. The first book is very focused on business. I actually have interviews with a number of business leaders, kind of looking at their perspective.
Yeah.
I do want to write a second book. And what I want to do in the second book is tell success stories of successful Gen Zers who are just starting out.
Okay.
How did you get that great job? What does that look like? How did you become an entrepreneur? And I want to target that to Gen Zers so that they can start creating a path for themselves.
Okay.
Now I've got to do the same thing and say, okay, it's time to sit down and write it.
Yeah, and also, if there's any success stories from businesses who have followed your strategy for working with Gen Zs, that would be great.
Yes, it would. Yes, it would.
I'm giving you ideas.
No, it's a great idea. And ultimately, what I want to be able to do, and I'm starting to do this now, is to get out and speak. And I think it's an important subject. I think a lot of business leaders need to hear it, and they need to hear that you don't have to blow your company up and start all over again. It's just making some minor changes to be more, I'll give you an example. And I don't know how it was early in your career. Early in my career, I had mentors. And when I say mentor, they weren't necessarily people that loved me. They were people who would say, all right, Len, we don't do that in a professional setting. We don't chime up and say those kinds of things in a meeting where the president of the company is there. Mm-hmm. I think in today's world, I feel like more and more of our leaders are a little afraid to do that with this younger generation. Although I will say two things. One, they need it. And two, if you ask Gen Zers, they want mentoring. They do want it. It's just the communication styles are different. So sometimes it looks like they're really resistant or they're not listening. So we have to work past that.
Yes. Yeah, I do. I do agree with that. I think that people are afraid of offending or overstepping it's really good.
And, my advice to the Gen Zers too is they wear their hearts on their sleeves. They just do. And they do get, as a generation, they do get more easily offended.
Yes.
To an extent, we have to help them to understand that when a person who's been in an authority position for 20 or 25 years asks them to do something or tells them to do something, that it's not personal in the way that they're presenting it to them. So that understanding has to be on both sides of the equation.
Yeah, I think it would be really helpful if they even had that in a quick, course up front, how to receive feedback, how to take direction.
You read my mind, sure. Yeah. That's yeah, absolutely. That's something I when I talked about speaking, what I want to do is quickly take the speaking and then get in and provide workshopping exactly on the subject that you're talking about.
Okay.
Yeah. It's needed. Well,
it definitely seems like it is. And just continuing the conversation on messaging, many leaders want to create stronger internal messaging and a more authentic culture, but they don't really know where to begin. Do you have any advice?
It's funny. You use the word authentic, and to me, if you are authentic, you don't have to figure it out, right? So, that's true. In a way, I guess my advice is don't get in your own way. If you are afraid of your own authenticity, you're not being authentic. So, my point being that when you have a company culture that you are aiming towards, first and foremost, make sure it's your culture. Because if it's not, if you're faking it, people are going to pick up on it. And I will tell you, Gen Z has a better BS meter than most. So they're going to pick up on that real quick. So the advice that I give to people, a friend of mine, Norman Wedderburn, is the president of Make-A-Wish Foundation down in South Florida. And he makes a point of this. He said, wherever you see Norman, it's the same guy. He's the same guy in the office. He's the same guy out on the street. And I've known him since we were kids. So it's definitely true. Yeah. I guess what I'm suggesting is I always tell people start from the inside and work out. Okay. So if you're trying to create a company culture, first and foremost, what is important to me as a leader? What is it that I'm trying to communicate? What is it that I'm trying to replicate? Develop that and then bring people with you. Okay.
Yes.
If you really believe in this path that you've created for yourself, make other believers in your organization. And then the key after that is be consistent in everything that you do. Consistently reinforce that message out on the street and inside the building.
Yeah. And
I just saw a speaker yesterday, a football player who used to play on the Colts, and he showed a video. Do you know who James Franklin is, who went to coach at Penn State? I'll make it quick. But anyway, they had a problem with their image. Joe Paterno, bad things happened there.
Okay.
He made it a point that he wanted to make better young men and then from that philosophy win football games. And he showed a video. This was after they lost a big playoff game, and I think it was against Western Michigan. And two out of all of his players were really upset and started walking off the field. While that's happening, he ran from one side of the field all the way to the other, grabbed those two guys, pointed them back and said, go back in there and shake hands with the other team. Yeah. And it's like, that's an authentic culture, and that's ensuring that it's happening all the way down to the individual level. Yeah. That's how you do it.
Yeah. Wow. You tell really good stories, Len.
I retell good stories.
I can visualize that happening. That's funny. I hope you don't mind. I just want to get personal for a moment and talk about the real Len outside of your business. So, are there any causes, organizations, or personal projects that are especially meaningful to you?
Absolutely. Anyone who knows me knows that I'm a huge supporter of the United Way. I'm actually the chairman of our local United Way for the second time. And I love the organization because it is so much like me. I mean, we're very business-like in our approach. So the dollars are well spent, audited. We know where every penny goes. We manage the partner agencies that we work with to make sure they're doing exactly what they say they're going to do. But it's full of heart, and it's full of wanting to do good, wanting to lift up our neighbors. I mean, that's really what the United Way is about, is helping folks who live down the street who just are in tougher circumstances than you are. And I've always loved that organization. So that's where I spend a lot of my time.
Okay. That's really wonderful. I really just have one last question for you, just looking ahead on what you believe business owners and leaders need to understand to stay relevant and connected in such a rapidly changing world and marketing, work and marketing.
I think, I know more than I think some people, certainly in my age category, do about AI. And there's still a lot of confusion about it. And I will say two things that I think are really important. One, it's a tool. Okay, that's what it is right now. It's a tool. It's not smarter than we are. It's just faster than we are. So don't be afraid to use it. As a matter of fact, you're really kind of falling behind if you're not using it. My thinking is, the example that I used when I was a kid, we didn't have an Encyclopedia Britannica. That was too fancy for us. We had a Funkin' Wagnalls encyclopedia. But the point was, if I needed to write a paper for school, I'd flip through the pages of volume 7 in the Funkin' Wagnalls encyclopedia and read about whatever the subject was. AI is really doing a lot of the same thing. It's just indexing all this information very quickly for us. Use it. But the second piece of advice is don't abuse it. Because what I'm seeing more and more are people who are putting inputs into AI, and whatever comes out, they take it in the form that it comes out and they produce it, and they just use it. That is a huge one.
Thank you. Yes. Oh my goodness.
It's great for brainstorming. It's great for thinking through ways to phrase things and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, to be an effective marketer, first of all, you have to fundamentally understand people. And again, understand your target audience. You should be able to speak in a way that resonates with your ideal customer.
Yes.
It's a tall order today to ask AI to do that. So don't just unleash it and let it do whatever it wants, because probably your prompts aren't quite as great as they could be.
Right.
But more importantly, you know the voice of your customer, so always give that last look. Even if you're just the editor, make sure you're editing it and ensuring it's delivering the marketing message that you truly want to deliver.
In your voice. Yes.
In your own voice.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Minus all the icons, please. I'm just saying. I'm sorry.
I know, but the algorithms seem to like icons. I mean, it does seem to work.
I don't know why ChatGPT, I keep saying to it, please don't give me any icons. And it keeps giving me icons. Please stop. So
I hear you.
That is some great advice. One thing that I'll say for businesses, forever and ever and ever, guess what? We'll always have to adapt. If you don't adapt, you get left behind. So, yeah. Well, this has just been such a pleasure. I've just learned so much about you and your business and your book and Gen Z, Gen Z, Gen X.
Yeah.
We are going to have all of Len's information, his bio, and all his links, and you can buy his book. So all his links will be below the video. And if you have any questions, he can certainly answer any questions in the chat. And I just thank you so much for your time today, Len. It was really
thanks for inviting me. It was a lot of fun.
Good. Well, that's our time for today. I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Learning League, and we'll see you next time. Bye.